Farcaster 101 is an educational series brought to you by GM Farcaster in partnership with Snickerdoodle, building off of their State of Farcaster report, which you can access at Snickerdoodle.com. This 12-part series introduces all aspects of the Farcaster ecosystem and helps you get started building your social graph and brand on Farcaster. GM Farcaster, and welcome to Module 3 of Farcaster 101. We're going to start diving into frames. So Module 3 is going to give you an introduction to frames, and Module 4 will help you learn how to create your own frames in a number of different ways. So if you have found us, and this is the first video you're watching, please step back to Modules 1 and 2 and get a little bit more of a foundation before you move forward. And also feel free to stop by our office hours, which we'll be holding each Wednesday as we introduce this series. And if you found us at a later date and our office hours are no longer active, find us on Farcaster and we'll be happy to answer any questions. So let's dive in with our introduction to frames. So we're going to get started with frames. So we're going to go over what are frames, use cases and examples. We're going to introduce you to transaction frames, composer actions, and mini apps. And these are all sort of extensions of the basic frames that we're going to start with. So what are Farcaster frames? Well, frames are a way to build interactive apps that run directly in a Farcaster social feed. They can be used to create rich in-feed experiences for web applications. So, Adrian, what does all of that mean? Because that's a bit of a mouthful. So what exactly are we talking about here when we talk about frames?
The best way to think about frames is as another type of content type almost that you're going to share and see and interact with in the Farcaster feed. So if you think about what other social networks are like, it's pretty much you have your feed of posts. Users come in, they're creating user-generated content. If you're using X, it's a text, or it used to be a text-based network, more video now these days, but LinkedIn, but whatever it is, you're seeing text and images, and that's pretty much, and video, and that's pretty much what people share. What frames are is a way for people to post and generate really interactive content. So as a user, when someone shares a frame, you can interact almost like a mini web page, if you will, that's right within your social feed. So it's like it makes Farcaster a really rich, dynamic feed of content, I'd say. It's really, I think, one of the more exciting features within Farcaster.
Perfect. And behind all of this is the Open Graph Protocol. So frames are standard for creating interactive and authenticated experiences on Farcaster, embeddable in any Farcaster client. A frame is a set of meta tags returned within the head of an HTML page. If a page contains all required frame properties, the frame apps will render the page as a frame. The frame meta tags extend the Open Graph Protocol. And Adrian, what is the Open Graph Protocol? Like, what is this that we're talking about? Where did it start? What does it do?
Yeah, so the Open Graph Protocol was originated in Facebook back in the day as a way for different social networks to get information about links that were being shared. So if you're going to share a URL on your social feed, by giving kind of the app a little bit more information in the URL, this is at the coding level, that app would know maybe what image to show as a preview. Or so like when you see a YouTube link, for instance, being shared on a social network and you see a preview of the video or the title or the description, or if you're sharing a blog or a newsletter and you see an image, all of that data comes from the Open Graph Protocol. That's considered Open Graph. And if you go to the next slide, this is an example on the screen here of how Open Graph data can be interpreted or displayed across different social networks. So if you want to share a YouTube video, and here's on the left side is how X is displaying a YouTube video. It's just the URL. It doesn't do anything with it. And on the right-hand side is how Warpcast is showing more of a rich preview. It's pulling the title and a little image, kind of thumbnail of the video. This is not frames yet. This is just like the basic Open Graph protocol data. So that's just the background on where frames came from. But this is still, I'd say Open Graph is still just very static. It's just displaying content. What frames does is it extends the Open Graph and makes it so that you can add additional features and make it more interactive. So imagine being able to like the YouTube video. Imagine being able to like the YouTube video or comment on it from within the feed without having to go to the app. That's the vision, I'd say, for frames.
And if you're looking for additional information about frames and what they can do, you can go to docs.farcaster.xyz/developers/frames. And that will give you a really great starting point, as well as some videos as to your next steps for building frames. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in our next module as well. But let's take a look at a frame before we go any further. And this is a frame by Snickerdoodle. It was for the State of Farcaster 2024 report. And you'll see within this cast, which is, as we talked about before, sort of the similar to a tweet or a post on other media. This is where you can add the link that will then turn into a frame. So essentially what Snickerdoodle wrote was, this text, your product testing or marketing campaign calibration can do much better on Farcaster than spending thousands of dollars on X, TG, or Discord, simply because of the high quality crowd. But the platform itself doesn't give much insights about its ecosystem yet. So of course we had the pleasure to do it. Check out the State of Farcaster to understand the platform better and leverage it to its fullest. And then dropped the link to the frame they created on DYOR. So they created a frame on DYOR. We're going to talk about that in our next video, in our next module. But this led to a really sort of straightforward frame. This is a pretty simple frame to create, but it provides a lot of powerful information within this small little window that somebody doesn't have to leave and go to another website just to check it out. You can add some links, and we will show you that as well. But this allows you to kind of flip through the different data that was presented within the report, which was pretty interesting as well. So you should definitely go check that out. So the other links down here, the other buttons, and you can have up to 4, I believe, in this type of frame, is the opportunity to go to the website and download the report itself. So it'll bring you to the actual report. And then the other button is the share button, which will then create a new cast in which you can share it with your audience on Warpcast. So a couple different options here. It's going to then dynamically create the cast for you. You'll be able to add some additional information and then cast this out to your followers. So that gives you a really good idea of a basic frame and what that looks like and how simple it can be to utilize and to create. We'll talk about creation shortly in our next module. Adrienne, anything I left out that you think we should add into this this particular information?
I think you covered it all. It's a good kind of just overview of the potential, and just to kind of, I guess, give the idea of what a frame is. It's just it's a way to create interactive experiences directly within your feed, because it's based on a standard, and we're going to show different examples. There's so many different things you can do with it. So it's
let's move on to some other examples.
Yeah.
Before we jump into a lot of other different types of frames, let's just talk about some basic history of frames on Farcaster. This just launched at the end of January 2023. So that was put into the protocol, and it sort of
2024, Prof.
Oh my God, 2024, I'm wrong. 2024, not 2023. It feels like it was 2 years No, it is not even a year old yet at the time of this recording. My apologies. So January 2024, this launched, and it was really kind of an exciting moment. You could see that the devs knew the potential here and were excited about it. So they immediately started seeing what they could do with frames. And they started pretty basic and straightforward, a lot of just sort of linking out to other sites, but starting to kind of explore what could be done. And this was one of the very first Farcaster frames. I think it was maybe the second one. The first one was Paragraph, I think, and maybe a couple others. And then it was the Girl Scout cookies. And this became a way to order Girl Scout cookies in a frame, linking out to a site, and also to be able to order them with crypto, which was very exciting. And then we get a little bit more complex as time goes on. Transaction frames came next, and this allowed for an actual transaction with your wallet to occur within the frame, or by staying, at least in a very simple way, within Warpcast. So this is an example of Sam's Candle Club, where you can actually subscribe to her hypersub being a method of subscription similar to like a Patreon or something like that, with a different time-bound subscription. And in this case, it's ordering handmade candles from Sam. And this can happen all within this frame. So very simple process as well. And then what else should we talk about with transaction frames? This has been something that's fairly new development. It came a few months after the introduction of frames. What am I missing here, Adrienne, that we might want to call out?
Well, this is, I guess I'll just say, because Farcaster is built on crypto rails and everybody has a way to attach a crypto account or a crypto wallet to your Farcaster account, it makes the ability to transact and kind of do a transaction in terms a lot easier, because Farcaster knows where your wallet is. So
it's allowed for a lot of creativity in terms of different types of transaction frames that we see. Sometimes they're pulling data from the social graph directly and sort of displaying that for you, whether that's maybe the number of casts or your storage availability, things like that. Or it can be pulling the opportunity to do a transaction with your wallet that's attached to your account. So there's different things that can be happening in the background. But it definitely allows for a lot of creativity. One of the other things it allows for is minting with a wallet, minting different NFTs, and we'll show that a little bit more in our next iteration, our next module. So we also have something called composer actions. So Adrienne, can you tell us what a composer action is, and how is this a little bit different?
A composer action is something you can take advantage of as you're composing or creating a cast in Farcaster. So there'll be a little menu option, which we'll demo in the next module, that as you're composing an act, there's a list of composer actions, and these are just Lego blocks. They're not necessarily built by the core Farcaster or Warpcast team. These are developers in the ecosystem are creating actions that anybody can use. And it's a way to use frames without having to develop your own. So one example is there's an app called events.xyz. It's like a Luma or an Evite, some sort of kind of event manager, but you can, with a composer action, select to host an event, and from a composer action, fill in a few little pieces of information, and then boom, you have when you go to create your cast, it'll display as a frame. Another example of a composer action is by Bounty Caster, where you can choose Bounty Caster in the list of composer actions when you're creating a cast, and it will let you create a bounty for in any number of categories. But let's say you want to, what's an example of a bounty? famous
Oh,
bounty
well,
or
let's see if maybe you want to reward somebody who might wear a crop top of your particular shirt that you created for at East Denver, and you wanted to put a
That's
bounty out there. You could do that within your composer action. This may or may not be a real thing that Adrian did. So
well,
there you
I
go.
did do that. A
There's
bounty.
that. There's that. The bounties can be fun or the bounties can be a little more serious. So say you're looking for a developer to assist on a project or a designer, or you need a logo created or what have you. You can post those with Bounty Caster, and you can do that right within Composer Action. So you open up your cast, click on the Composer Action button, and it will give you a list of different options. And we're going to show you that in our next module and kind of walk through the interactive pieces of this. All right. And it does make it very easy so that you don't have to necessarily develop your own frame for these things. And then taking it to the next level is mini apps. And mini apps are coming in different flavors. This is sort of a basic mini app with Paragraph, which allows you to actually read this newsletter / blog post right within your feed. And it opens up into a nice reading experience so that you can read and then subscribe, and then also even collect the NFT that might go with this particular post. So we do use Paragraph for our newsletters, and we will be actually creating special newsletter for this series, for the Farcaster 101 series. So you will see a companion piece to each of these videos that lays out all the resources that go along with it and make it very easy for you to access. So look for that in the GMFC 101 channel. Did I get the channel right? What is it?
GM Farcaster 101
101. The
channel.
GM Farcaster 101 channel. I knew I was going to mess that part up. We might just leave that in anyway for fun.
Mhm.
So also mini apps can be, like I said, simple along these lines, just creating a great different reading experience, or they can be a little bit more complex where they open up a game. So one such game, which we'll show you in the next module, is Flappycaster, which I am horrible at. Let me be very clear about that. And trivia, which I am good at. So both of these happen within a frame on the timeline, but open up a whole different, very rich app experience right within Farcaster. Anything else about mini apps that I may have left out, Adrian?
You didn't leave anything out, but I'm just really excited for everyone to be able to see frames in action, because
Yes.
as we're going through this, like we said, frames have been around for less than a year. It feels much longer. And already when I go to other social networks and I scroll a feed and I realize the only thing I can do is consume, like watch a video, read someone's post, and you lose people's attention. Like you can't. So everything in Farcaster with the frames has become such a richer, dynamic, interactive experience. And it's not because the core team or the Warpcast team are building all these features. It's because it created a way for other people to build and kind of other developers to build these experiences. So I'm just very excited to get to the next module to do the demos of frames, because they're super cool.
Well, before we do that, let's mention this one bit of information from DF, David Furlong, who has been amazing with creating frames. He was one of the first sort of frame developers and created a lot of open source frame tooling. And he had recently posted there are now 24 apps that display frames within them. And it is another part of this sort of Lego block thing that you can then add these into other clients, other apps, and allow them to be used there as well. So there's a lot of cross pollination, which is fantastic. And we're going to move on to our next module in creating frames and give you a lot more idea of what this looks like. We'll do some interacting within these frames, the mini apps and the composer actions, so you can see exactly how this all works and how you can create your own on Farcaster. So we'll see you in just a moment. Bye-bye.